In Excel 2010, there's a new function called aggregate. That's the name of this worksheet here. Nothing is quite so annoying in tabulating data to get an error as an answer. Suppose, for example, in this worksheet, we want to track the total salary right here. So an easy way to do this, of course, would be to use the auto sum button and then simply click column C, and we've got an answer. Except we don't have an answer here. Unbeknownst to us at first is farther down the list, we've got a problem here. There's a problem there. Looks like there's an error. And you can see the same sort of thing about to happen in column D. Maybe we'd like to average those percents. Now, that's potentially a risky thing to do anyway, but if we want to do an average here, we could certainly do this any number of ways, but the average for column D is going to produce a similar result. The aggregate function, a new function in Excel 2010, allows us to ignore cells that have errors in them, or it also allows us to ignore hidden rows. Deal with the issue of errors first of all. The function is called aggregate, A-G. You'll see it right away right here, of course. Aggregate. What's the description? Not very persuasive, is it? Returns an aggregate in a list or database. Well, it does do that. Let's tab this into place here. Now, the first item that we put in there, and you could certainly type this if you use it frequently, for example, you're probably going to type in a 9 or a 1 most often, but we see some other choices here. These are the kind of things that we can tabulate, the kind of statistical measures we're likely to want to use here. So in this example here, I want to use a sum. I'll just click up there and put in 9, or could have tabbed it in as well. We want to do a total, comma, and we want to, what? Ignore various possibilities here that might occur in column C. You saw the example earlier where a typical sum didn't work. We want to ignore the error values. That's a 6. Now, if there are hidden rows in here as well, we might want to use option 7 to ignore hidden rows and error values. So in this case, 6 is good enough. We'll put in the 6 there. Now, where are we looking? In this case, and we could certainly highlight cells, but in this case, it's column C. So we do want to add up, that's what the 9 means. We want to sum the numbers, the entries in column C, but ignore the errors. And there's our answer. That's the total of the entries in column C, ignoring any cells that have errors. And similarly, too, if we want to do an average here, same idea again, equal, there's aggregate, tab it into place possibly. This time we want to do an average, that's a 1, comma, and here too. We've got error values in there, that's a 6. Just like before in the previous example. And the range we're looking at this time is in column D. So the average of those percentages there, this time ignoring the errors, is this. And of course, you probably display that as a percent. Now, imagine a list like this, very similar to what we've already seen, but imagine this as the only data in a worksheet, but possibly some other columns are going to be here. And maybe you're about to print this. Now, there's a total at the bottom right here. Here's an average right here of those cells. But before printing this, and maybe it's a list of some people who are going to attend a particular function or something and it has something to do with HR, you don't want to show row 2 or row 4 here. You'd like to hide them. Now, I'm ready to hide these, but keep your eye on those two totals at the bottom, 577,000 and then an average of 41,200. Right-click Hide. What's happened to those averages? They're exactly the same as before. And that's misleading information. The total of these visible cells here is not 577,000. And if you look in the status bar right now, you'll see what that total is. It's 486,950. And the average of them is 40,579, not 41,216. So what do we really want to do here if we want to take into account the idea that from time to time we might have hidden rows here? We'll use the aggregate function. And in this case, we want to do a sum again. That's a 9, comma, and we're ignoring hidden rows. That's a 5. And here's our list. There we go. So there's that total. We saw it previously. It's the sum of these highlighted cells. There are hidden rows in there. If we bring them back, which we will do in a bit, let's just do that now. We could adjust them. By bringing back the hidden rows, we'll just click here. I'll double click a row boundary and watch that 486 total, 186,950. Now becomes 531,870. At different times, depending upon our needs and what else might be in the worksheet, we can ignore the hidden rows. So the aggregate function is long overdue. It's relatively easy to use. It is a little awkward in the sense that if you don't use it very often, when you first look at it, you don't really have a clue as to what's going on. But if you simply remember that it's a function that allows us to ignore hidden rows and errors It's the ideal function for tabulating data.